Okay, subtract the 32. That leaves you with x squared plus x minus 32 equals 0. Oh, sorry, minus 30 equals 0. Sorry. Now, if you have something set equal to 0, how can I solve? Factor. So what are your signs going to be? Both plus, both minus, or one of each? It's negative at the end. Both your signs will be what? One of each. So one positive, one negative. What multiplies to negative 30 and adds to positive 1?
30.
Multiply to 30.
I got them backwards.
5 and 6. So 6 should be what? Positive or negative? Positive. 5 should be negative. Then set each part of your equation equal to 0. So we should get two different answers. X equals negative 6 and x equals positive 5. One of these you throw out. Which one gets thrown away and why?
The negative.
The negative gets thrown away. Two reasons. Because it's negative and because we're looking for odd integers. So this one doesn't make any sense. This one you plug back in. So your first integer would be 5. What would your next integer be? 7. We're looking for positive odds. But what is your question actually asking you for?
The sum.
The sum. What does sum mean?
The number.
Add them together. So 5 plus 7 gives you an answer of what? 12. That's the actual answer that we are looking for. Questions on how I did that? So you have to set up the equation correctly. Then you have to make sure that you read the rest of the problem to make sure that you're doing this correctly. Okay, so make sure you're reading the problem thoroughly. Okay, next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to ask you to simplify. Okay, now we're going to work on the i's. So simplify. Simplify. For number 2, I would like you to simplify 7i times 2i plus 5. 7i multiplied by 2i plus 5. 7i multiplied by 2i plus 5. So really all we're doing here is distributing. So distribute the 7i to both of these. What is 7i multiplied by 2i? 14i squared plus 7i times 5 is 35i. Now, what do I have to do to keep simplifying? I squared turns into what? Negative 1. So this I squared gives you a negative attached to the 14. So your actual answer should be negative 14 plus 35i. Now, is that written in the right format for an answer? Yes. Okay, you always write the real part, then the imaginary part. So the whole number should go first, then the imaginary part. Whole number, then the imaginary portion. Okay, try another one. Number 3. Simplify 3 over 4 plus I. 3 divided by 4 plus I. What is wrong with this as it's written? There's an I in the denominator. We can't have I's in the denominator, so how do you get rid of it? Multiplied by, what's it called? The conjugate. Okay, what's the conjugate of 4 plus I? 4 minus I. I'm going to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 4 minus I. In the top, you distribute, so 3 times 4 gives you 12, minus 3i. Over, in the denominator, you do have to FOIL, so first times first gives you 16. Outsides is minus 4i. Insides is plus 4i. And last is negative I squared. Combine your like terms. So the 4i and the negative 4i, these are going to cancel. What happens with negative I squared? What does negative I squared turn into? A plus 1. So if we combine like terms, the top stays exactly like it is. So 12 minus 3i. Over 16 plus 1 is 17. Now, do I need to split these up for my answer? You do not. The reason you don't need to split it up is because you look at, would 12 over 17 reduce? No. Would 3 over 17 reduce? No. So if nothing's going to reduce, you do not have to split it up. Okay, you can leave it just like that. You don't have to split it up because there's nothing that can be reduced. That's the whole reason that we split things up sometimes, is just so that we can reduce. Okay, next one, simplify negative 5i to the 13th power. Negative 5i to the 13th power. Simplify completely. What do you have to do to simplify something to a high power of I? You have to set up the chart, okay? So I to the first, I to the second, I to the third, and I to the fourth. No. Then fill in your chart. So what's the saying that we use to fill in the chart? I won, a negative sandwich. So sandwich the negatives in between. I won, a negative sandwich. So we know this is going to be negative 5 multiplied by what's I to the 13th? If you count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I to the 13th is just I. And what is negative 5 times I? Negative 5i. That's your answer. Fill in your chart and substitute. Questions on how I did that? Good. Okay, next one, number 5. Okay, for number 5, I would like you to solve 3x squared plus 40 equals 4. Solve 3x squared plus 40 equals 4. Three x squared plus 40 equals 4. How would you solve this? Any ideas? Do you want to put everything on one side or separate sides? One side? Okay, so if we move this over, you're going to subtract the 4. That would leave you with 3x squared plus 36 equals 0. How do we solve that? 3x squared plus 36 equals 0. Start with a GCF, yeah, so take out a 3. Left behind would be x squared plus what? 12 equals 0. How do we solve that? Divide away the 3. What's 0 divided by 3? 0. So x squared plus 12 equals 0. Can you factor that? Is that factorable? No. No, that doesn't factor. No factoring. So if you can't factor, you either have to get things on opposite sides and take the square root, or you have to do complete the square. Which one do you think would be easier here? Complete the square, or you could use quadratic formula, or get things on opposite sides and take the square root. I'm going to do opposite sides here. So this would be x squared equals negative 12. When you move over the 12, you subtract 12 from both sides. Now, how do you undo a square? Root both sides. What happens automatically when you put in a square root? Plus or minus. So x equals plus or minus, what's the square root of negative 12? What comes out automatically if you have a negative? An I. What can you take out of a 12? 2i. What's left behind? Radical 3. Okay? So you have to figure out, if it's not factorable, you have to put things on opposite sides, or do quadratic formula, or do you complete the square? You have to figure out which way is going to work best for you. I could have done quadratic formula on this right from the beginning. Would it take a little while? Yes. Okay, but you do have to know how to solve these, and you do know how. Okay, I'm fairly certain that you guys do know how to solve these. I hope. Okay, next one, number 6. Huh? Are we on 7? No, we're on 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're on 6. It's okay. Number 6. I want to know what number should be added. What number should be added to both sides to complete the square? What number should be added to both sides to complete the square? With x squared minus 8x equals 15. X squared minus 8x equals 15. For complete the square, what do we first have to do? You need to make a space for it, basically. So x squared minus 8x, I'm going to leave that space because this is where you're going to complete the square, equals 15, and again, you're going to complete the square, write it in on the right side. Now, how do I figure out what number needs to be added? What's the formula? Middle number divided by 2, so negative 8 over 2, and square it. So what's negative 8 divided by 2? Negative 4, and 4 squared tells you add what to both sides? Plus 16. So, do I actually have to solve this equation? No, this is just asking you for what is that C value. Okay? Now, if you wanted to, you could continue solving. But here, we're only asking you to figure out what's the C value. So, middle number divided by 2 and squared. Okay, middle number divided by 2 and squared. Next one, number 7. Again, we're going to simplify. We're going to go back to simplify. Simplify, let's try 3 plus 2i multiplied by 5 minus 4i. 3 plus 2i multiplied by 5 minus 4i. Three plus 2i times 5 minus 4i. This is really just a what kind of problem? Just FOIL. Okay, so first times first gives you 15. Outsides is minus 12i. Insides plus 10i. And last, negative 8i squared. Combine your like terms, so we're going to add the 12i and the 10i. What happens with negative 8i squared? Turns into a plus 8. So when you add these together, you want to add the whole numbers first, or the real parts first. So 15 plus 8 is 23. Negative 12i plus 10i gives you a minus 2i. That's the answer that we're looking for. Two more for you guys, and then we'll be done. Okay. Number 8. I would like you to simplify again. 3 minus 4i quantity squared. 3 minus 4i quantity squared. So, what do you have to do if you're squaring a quantity? Write it out twice, right? So you can't just distribute that exponent. So 3 minus 4i times another 3 minus 4i. So really we need to FOIL here. So first times first gives you 9. Outsides is minus 12i. Insides, another minus 12i. And last times last is plus 16i squared. Then combine your like terms. So combine the 12i's. What happens with 16i squared? What does that turn into? Negative 16. So when you combine your like terms, 9 minus 16 is negative 7. Negative 12i, another negative 12i is minus 24i. Make sure when you're writing your answers that you always write the real portion, then the imaginary portion. Okay, it has to be written that way, or else it's wrong. And then last one, number 9. Simplify again, 2i over 3 plus I. 2i divided by by 3 plus I. 2I divided by 3 plus I. So how do you simplify this? We can't have an I in the denominator, so what do you have to multiply by? Conjugate, which is what? 3 minus I. Okay, numerator and denominator, multiply both by 3 minus I. So in the numerator, distribute through, so 2I times 3 gives you 6I. 2I times negative I is minus 2I squared over, FOIL in the denominator, so first times first is 9, outsides is minus 3I, inside is plus 3I, and last is negative I squared. When you combine your like terms, the 3I and the negative 3I will completely cancel each other out. What happens when the negative I squared turns into a what? A plus 1. The numerator, this I squared turns this to be a plus 2. So if you rewrite this, we have 6I plus 2 over what? 10. Now, is any part of that going to be able to reduce? Yes, so you have to split it into 2 parts, okay? Which part should go first, the 6I over 10 or the 2 over 10? The 2 over 10. The reason is you want to write the real portion first. So you always want to write the real portion first. So this would be 2 over 10 plus 6I over 10. What does 2 over 10 reduce to be? 1 over 5 plus 6I over 10 reduces to be what? 3I over 5. That's your answer. Now, if you combined these and wrote it all over one fraction bar, that would be fine, but you don't have to, so you can just leave them separate. Questions on how we did any of this? Okay, homework for this is going to be Unit 5 review in your packet. You're doing the odds.